Greetings War Thunderers, this is Longshot with a stock survival guide for flying the J7W1 Shinden in arcade. This is a Tier 4 plane, current battle rating of 5.7. As you can see, it's a canard design with the engine and propeller at the back, rudders mounted on the wings and elevators at the front of the plane. It was built to intercept B-29s, armed with 4 nose-mounted 30mm cannon. Only a few prototypes were constructed for testing purposes, and from what little we know, it seems that the plane was successful. However, the end of the war arrived before it could be put into production. In War Thunder, however, this plane has, for a very long time, been almost unflyable in arcade due to its elevators, which were incredibly poor. That changed in patch 1.53 when the elevators gained enough authority to make the plane viable, though its controls were still extremely stiff. In fact, I flew it quite a lot in 1.53 and was all set to make a video on the plane. Then 1.55 arrived and I had to start again from the beginning. 1.55 fixed a long-standing bug that made canard planes handle worse in arcade than they did in realistic, and also this patch introduced the compressor to its upgrades, which reduced the amount of engine power available when the plane is completely stock. So in this video I'll show you what the plane's capable of without any upgrades, along with tactics to help you survive stock syndrome while learning to fly the plane to its strengths, as that will obviously help you to get the most out of it once you have its upgrades fully unlocked. To begin with, let's look at its armour. Shielding in front of the pilot and some hardened glass for head-on protection. Along with its nose-mounted cannon, you might think this plane is ideally suited to head-ons, but the X-ray tells a different story. The fuel tank under the pilot should be safe enough in a head-on, but look at those wings, simply jam-packed with fuel tanks. And of course your elevators are highly exposed to damage. Like many Japanese planes, there's a simple rule with the Shinden: you must avoid enemy bullets. Before I look at how the plane flies, let's look at its upgrades and the order in which they should be researched. You should get the radiator first, and then compressor, as you need that extra engine power, not airframe, as I did here. Previously I'd have said to go for the ammo belts next, but the default ammo is actually pretty good in this patch. Hence I suggest after the compressor go for the engine, the injection, and then the belts, which I'll look at now. Default has 3 high explosive rounds and 1 practice, but there's a much higher ratio of HE rounds in the universal belt, along with some incendiaries as well. Ground targets isn't very useful for shooting down planes. Tracer is pure high explosive but at a lower muzzle velocity, and stealth is very similar to the default belt. In theory, after you got the belts, I'd go for the universal first. If that didn't work, I'd try the tracer. Okay, let's take a look at how the plane flies. I'm doing this in a custom battle so that you can see my setup. 800 meters convergence as the guns are all nose mounted, and 30 minutes of fuel, which is the lowest available option. The plane spawns in doing nearly 400 kilometers an hour, so you want to ease it up smoothly into a steep climb to convert that speed to altitude, and then gradually lower the nose to get it to its optimal sustained climbing speed of around 255 kilometers an hour. After 2 WEPs, you'll reach around 3,600 meters from a 2,000 meter spawn, fairly good for a stock plane. And a 3rd WEP takes you up to around 4,300 meters. As speed is so important to the Shinden, and it's an excellent bomber hunter, it's very important to climb, even when the plane's stock. Next I'll look at its roll rate, comparing it to the Focke-Wulf 190 D9, which I'm also flying stock. As you can see, the D9's much faster, but the Shinden's roll rate is still quite good. Next I'll turn the planes horizontally using elevators alone. This is a weakness of the D9, but even so it would have turned a lot better than the Shinden before patch 1.55, so you can see how much the Shinden has improved. It's not as good as other canard planes, such as the XP-55, which can compete with turn fighters, but it will make it a lot easier for the Shinden to keep guns on target in a diving attack. Let's look at the rudders, which used to be the strongest directional control on this plane, but now are weaker than the elevators, as I hit both of them at once, the elevators lifting the plane into a steep climb. By comparison, the D9 has a much stronger rudder and performs a tighter and flatter climbing spiral. In the past, with the J7W1, you'd use the rudder to turn the plane, but now I'd go with the elevators. It's not that the rudders are weaker than they used to be, it's simply that the elevators have been improved. And after that steep climb, it settled into a flat turn. At stock level, it lacks the engine power for climbing spirals, which is a manoeuvre you should only perform sparingly, if at all. Okay, moving right along, it's time to nose over into a dive to test its high-speed handling, beginning with its roll rate. As the plane accelerates, the roll rate tightens up a little, but nowhere near as much as the D9's does. Past 500 km an hour, the Shinden's roll rate is actually the faster of the two. Nearing top speed, the D9's roll rate slows right down, whereas the Shinden is nice and snappy by comparison. Along with its improved elevators, I can only describe this plane's high-speed handling as superb. Though to get the most out of it, you'll need to practice what's known as saddling up, which is rolling to match the heading of your target so that your elevators can track its movements. It's holding its speed quite well in level flight in this very long dive, and that makes sense as it's quite a heavy plane with a lot of momentum. Rolling to adjust, and down it goes. Let's try the vertical zoom climb test. This is not how I'd suggest zoom climbing in a battle. That's best done on a more shallow angle in this plane. What I'm measuring here is the amount of altitude it can recover before it drops below 200 km an hour, which I can directly compare against the zoom climb on other planes. And the stock Shinden gains around 1800 meters. Not bad considering how long I spent in that diving attack. I'll try a stall hammerhead turn, a manoeuvre that it was incapable of performing previously, but now it flips over quickly and smoothly, though I would not suggest trying too many rope-a-dopes while the plane's in stock condition. If you're familiar with how the J7W1 used to fly, you'll know that this next kill would have been impossible. The plane simply could not have turned enough to get guns on target, and now it can. Alright, time for some battle footage. Climbing at the start is important for any fighter in War Thunder, but as I said, especially for this plane. Its 5.7 barrel rating exposes it to a lot of bombers, which are what its four 30mm cannon are specifically designed to shoot down. Note that I fire these cannons as if they're 20mm, in a burst rather than sniping as I do with larger caliber guns. Apart from bombers, altitude gives you the ability, of course, to boom and zoom, especially climbing fighters, which is this plane's bread and butter. Just settling in behind this P-51, holding the guns nice and steady, and it makes a mess of whatever you hit. I'll show quite a few of these examples of boom and zooms. I know you've seen them lots of time before in other videos, but after all, it is what this plane does extremely well, and it should be your go-to tactic whenever possible. As again, I'm diving on an incoming stream of enemy fighters. This Yak 9 has started to climb, sees me coming and turns to face for a head-on. And I do not want to face him head-on, let off a very quick burst, then I'm out of the way. I'm just using my speed, trying to keep the plane as smooth as I can and reduce the G-forces, although I did pull a few there, and now I'm extending away. He can't follow me. In fact, I'm thinking now that I've got plenty of speed, nearly 400 km an hour I was doing, so I can loop. Something unthinkable in this plane before, and drop down on top of him, except of course I'm actually flying in a squad here, which I didn't do very much in this plane, but I actually recorded this today, and squad mates are good. They can set up kills for you, but they can also take quite a few of your kills. I would have had that Yak 9 and this P-38 as well, and the Tiffy. I'll settle for the P-47, but even so, this shows what this plane can do in a diving attack. And chances are, if I wasn't in a squad, blue planes would have snaffled all those kills anyway. Again, in a very shallowish climbing angle, no steeper than 45 degrees. Another example. Again, I was in the same squad. Flip is making a boom and zoom attack. I'm watching him to pick up trailers. He's picked up a BF-109. Just looking at each of the planes to see what they're doing. P-51 behind him is also following. So I'll take out the one at the back first, which is the P-51. Plane's accelerating nicely in the dive. I'm using WEP to accelerate as fast as I can, then I'll let go as soon as I'm looking to fire. Hit the WEP again to catch up to the BF-109G before it can get away. And look how easily I'm running him down. As long as you don't make too many sharp manoeuvres, or keep them to an absolute minimum, you'll retain a lot of speed in this plane. But boom and zoom runs like this require patience and positioning, and you should really set yourself a budget of only 2 kills per battle. Some battles obviously you'll get more than that, but it's not always the case. You'll just get easy position above the enemy stream of incoming fighters and near their bombers where you can take out lots of planes. For instance, in this battle here, it's a Kalkan Gold domination. I've got a Tiffy and a Spitfire who have both outclimbed me. Now it's silly me being up there trying to take them on, so I was just patient. I hung back. I waited till they committed to other targets. Now the Tiffy has dived away, and very soon afterwards the Spitfire decided to do the same. And that leaves me finally, after about 5 minutes into the battle. I was willing to wait, and now I'm in control. of altitude, which means yes, I can perform a safe boom and zoom attack. So I've got a BTD that's spawned. There's a stream of them heading over toward that side of the battle, the AE airfield. And I'm going to start an attack now, probably diving at that P63 lower down. Just hold off, there's a couple of them down there. Okay, I'm choosing the one directly underneath me, especially as he's within 2 kilometers now, so that's far too close to ignore. He's climbing. Okay, it's an easy target. Let's see if I can pick up one of these in the furball on the way through. Nope, they're flying just a little bit too sharply for me to get guns on. So on the way out, I'll see if I can hit this tiffy. Very quick shot. And as I said, these cannons wreck what they touch. And then I'm not hanging around, I'm just extending out using web, climbing at a very shallow angle until I'm far enough away that no one can catch up to me. Another thing you should avoid in this plane are head-ons. Now I did describe its fragility, but there's another reason as well. And if you've seen my video on the XP55, you'll know what this reason is. What method do I commonly use to avoid head-ons? The snap roll. In this plane, as with the XP55, a snap roll will put you straight into a stall spin. Now to escape a stall spin in this plane, you want to do the opposite to what you did to get into it. In this case, I got into it by going snap roll into the right, so I have to use down elevator, left rudder and left roll. But obviously it's better to avoid going into a stall spin in the first place, so you don't want to snap roll. Instead you want to do an alternative method, which looks like this. As you can see, the plane is not going into a stall spin, even though it's snap rolling. And what I'm doing there is I'm using left rudder when I'm doing a right snap roll and right rudder when I'm doing a left snap roll. Instructions are on the screen to try and make that clearer as to what I'm doing, and yes, this works on the SP55 as well and other planes that have a similar problem with going to stall spins out of snap rolls. Also, you should not hold head-ons. I did describe this when I was looking at the X-ray of the plane, but if you try and hold a head-on, the possibility of taking damage is just too high, and yes, I've caught a light. Now, in my 47 battles flying this plane, I've caught a light quite a few times. I've managed to put it out twice, not on this occasion. Don't ever rely on being able to put out fires in this plane, because most of the time that's what happens. It's not pretty. Okay, sometimes when you're trying to get up to altitude, it simply doesn't happen, doesn't work out, as happened in this battle here. Now, this is near the start. I've climbed out to the side, as you should definitely do on this plane. I'm hanging back. I don't want to get involved in the initial merge between their climbing fighters and my teams. As you can see, it looks pretty even at the moment. There's a bunch of blue fighters up there. There's a bunch of red fighters. I just want to let them do their thing. Get out of the way. Whoever's going to die, do so. Whoever's going to dive away should do so. Then hopefully I can take over control of high altitude afterwards. But as it turns out, there's out to the side of me is a Doe 217, and a La-9 seems to have taken interest in him, so I'm having to turn and run away. He might have taken interest in me too, of course. Behind him is a Corsair, and as I turned to continue to run, the Corsair took a real liking to me and decided to track me through the clouds, and I quickly realised he was going to intercept me unless I managed to dive away. Now yes, this plane can turn far better than it did, but it is not the XP55. It cannot hang in a battle with anything that has any kind of turning ability, and a Corsair will definitely outturn this plane. So I have to dive and run, and I'm going to take him straight over my airfield, and if he survives that, I'll get straight underneath my fighter spawn and see if that takes him out. He couldn't quite catch up to me, but once I hit low altitude I was in more danger because his engines, which are almost certainly spaded up, are superior to mine, and I've no longer got dive speed. But I was fortunate while he was pinging away at me, someone did spawn in, dropped in behind him, and got an easy kill. But yes, that left me at low altitude, no speed, in a very bad position in this battle, but in the past that would have meant this battle was over for me in this plane. I would have probably been best off just bailing out and jumping into something that could actually perform at low altitude, but now the plane can actually perform down here. It just needs enough altitude, say 1600 meters, to perform a boom and zoom. And it can also intercept if someone opens themselves up as a target. What I don't want to do is get underneath that stream of incoming planes from their spawn. I'm just waiting for someone to isolate themselves, like this Messerschmitt 410 has done, out away from his friends. And then I can use my speed to quickly close in, while continuing to look around and make sure no one's intercepting me. Yep, I'm still clear. He sees me coming. I'm not sure what he's trying to do, but he's going to turn right in front of my guns. And I can easily turn and track him and get myself a kill while extending away from the stream of incoming fighters. And that will get you occasional kills here and there. You have to be patient. The moment you dive into that furball or dive under that stream of incoming planes, you're not going to last very long. Eventually, I tried a few more times, which I've edited out here, without success. Friendlies got them first. Often happens when you're in a stock plane, even this one. Eventually I went out to the other side of the battle where there were a couple of fighters at low altitude, just checking to make sure there aren't any new enemies streaming in. There will be, but just not yet. And now I'm close enough to think about engaging them. There's a 109 helping down there. There's a Focke-Wulf 190 out over the ocean. If that 109 misses the 410, I'll take a dive at him. Okay, here we go. Diving in from above, I will have the full profile of his plane to aim at, and it makes it a very easy shot. Now I can carry on and attack the F-82 after making sure that I wasn't going to meet him head on. But he's a very fast plane, he's probably spaded up and I'm certainly not, and very soon he's going to outrun me. So I expend the rest of my ammo, trying for some pot shots, and now I'm going to back off and reload. Turning as smoothly as I could. You've really got to avoid keyboard maneuvers in this plane as much as you possibly can. Just nice, smooth, subtle maneuvers like that. While I'm watching a whole stream of new enemies coming in, obviously I can't engage until I have enough altitude to give me speed in a diving attack, and obviously I need my cannons online as well. Just lowering the nose to keep my speed high. Okay, time to turn back, nice and slowly and easily. There is no rush. And let's see what unfolds. I don't want to get into a head-on with that Tiffy, so I'll just wait and see what he does. Looks like he's diving down to the 109. There's a friendly Corsair diving in and another Spitfire down there, so there's enough friendlies down there to keep them engaged and busy. Okay, this 190's got a 109 all over the back of him, and there's a Focke-Wulf 190 behind them. I have to go for him first, otherwise I'll just wear his cannon shells. He's going to turn right in front of my guns. Very easy with the high-speed handling of this plane to adjust and get the shot off. It's really what makes this plane so deadly now. Alright, that just leaves the 109G. Now I hold this shot, I kept firing probably for a bit too long there, though I was landing hits. Okay, and before I overshoot, I get one very last shot at point blank range, which this time does not miss. Okay, so that concludes my demonstration of tactics for flying this plane in stock condition. And here's what my record looks like at the moment. I've flown it in 47 battles, lost it 16 times, and shot down 109 planes. A kills per flyout ratio of over 2 to 1, which is better, by the way, than I managed in the P-51D5, even when it was fully upgraded. During that period I've managed to unlock the radiator, airframe and ammunition belts, even though I haven't used them. If I'd concentrated on the engine upgrades, I'm sure my kill count would have been higher and my progress quite a lot faster. The plane does indeed require patience, but the good news is you can practice similar tactics flying at stock to what you'll use when the Shinden is fully upgraded, and from all reports this does become an amazing energy fighter. It has always been an extremely fast plane, and it still is. The difference now is that you can actually maneuver and get guns on target. But that's all I have for this video. In my next one I'll drop back to Tier 3, where I'll take a detailed look at the first Yak 3. I hope everyone had a great Christmas, whether you celebrate it or not, and I'd like to wish you all a prosperous new year. Until my next video, this is Longshot signing off, and I'll be seeing you in the skies.